The wind howled like a wounded beast across the Montana plains, hurling icy claws of snow against the timber walls of Ethan Cole's cabin. It was one of those nights when even the wolves stayed hidden, and the sky itself seemed angry at the earth. Inside, the fire roared in the stone hearth, the only light in a world gone white. Ethan sat near it, polishing his old Winchester rifle. Not because he needed to, but because silence had a way of clawing at his mind. Out here, solitude was both friend and enemy. He'd been alone on this ranch for 3 winters now, ever since his brother died in a logging accident up near Pine Ridge. He didn't talk about it much. There wasn't anyone to talk to. His only company was his horse, Dusty, and the faint sound of wind pressing against the window shutters. That night, as he set the rifle down, he thought he heard something. At first it was faint, like the cry of a fox, but then it came again. A sound that didn't belong to the storm, a human sound. He stood up slowly, listening. Another cry. A woman's voice, weak. Without thinking twice, Ethan threw on his heavy coat, pulled the door open, and stepped into the blizzard. The wind slapped him hard, stealing his breath. Snowflakes swirled so thick he could barely see past the porch. He took the lantern from the hook and shielded it with his hand as he trudged forward. "Hello!" he shouted into the storm. "Who's out there?" No answer, just the whistle of wind. He moved toward the fence, boots crunching through snow that reached up to his knees. Then, through the curtain of white, he saw a shape. Small, huddled, half buried near the gate. He dropped to his knees. It was a woman. Her dress was soaked through, her hair frozen to her cheeks, her lips pale as ash. She wasn't moving. "Hey," he said, shaking her shoulder. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open for a moment, frightened, confused. "Please," she whispered. "Don't leave me." Ethan didn't waste another second. He scooped her into his arms. She was light as a bird, and carried her back to the cabin, kicking the door open with his boot. He laid her by the fire, quickly wrapping her in a wool blanket. Her skin was cold as ice. He worked fast, heated water, rubbed her hands, tried to get some warmth back into her fingers. It took nearly an hour before she began to breathe more steadily, color returning to her face. When her eyes finally opened again, she looked around as if unsure where she was. "Where am I?" she asked faintly. "You're safe," Ethan said softly. "Name's Ethan Cole. This is my ranch, about a mile west of Pine Hollow." She blinked, trying to sit up. The carriage," she whispered. "It left me. He left me there." Ethan frowned. "Who left you?" She swallowed hard, voice trembling. "My husband. Or, he was supposed to be. We never even made it to the preacher. He looked at me and said I wasn't what he ordered. Then he threw my bag into the snow and drove off." Ethan froze. "What he ordered?" She looked away, ashamed. "I was a mail-order bride." The fire cracked. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, silence fell heavy between them. She told him her name was Clara Hartley, from Missouri. Her father had died 2 winters ago. Her mother was ill, and there was no money left. She'd seen an ad in a newspaper, a widower in Montana Territory seeking a wife to help raise his 2 children and manage a homestead. His name was Thomas Beckett. She wrote to him for months. He sounded kind, promised her a new life. But when she arrived on the train that morning, he'd taken one look at her and scowled. Said she was too frail, too city-bred, that she'd never survive the winter. Then, when the snow started, he dumped her from the carriage on the way to his ranch and left her there to die. As she spoke, tears streaked her cheeks. Ethan clenched his jaw. He'd known Thomas Beckett, a man with money but not much heart, still leaving a woman to die in a storm. That was unforgivable. "You're lucky I found you," Ethan said finally. She gave a weak smile. "Maybe it's not luck. Maybe it's mercy." He didn't answer. But as he looked at her, this trembling, broken stranger who'd been treated like cargo, something stirred inside him. Not pity, something deeper. He made her a cup of hot broth and sat beside her as she drank. The wind outside began to fade, the fury of the storm losing its strength. "You can stay here until you're strong enough to travel," he said. "I've got a spare room." Her eyes widened. I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing," Ethan replied firmly. "No one deserves to be left out there." She nodded slowly, clutching the blanket around her. For the first time in months, she felt safe. Days passed, the storm cleared, leaving the land blanketed in white. Clara recovered slowly, her strength returning as she helped around the cabin, cooking, sweeping, feeding the animals. Ethan noticed she had a gentle way with everything. The horses, the chickens, even the old dog that rarely trusted anyone. At night, they talked. She told him about her childhood, about dreams she'd buried. He told her about his brother, about losing the will to hope for anything better. Little by little, the silence that once haunted the cabin turned into laughter. But rumors spread fast in small towns. When Ethan rode to Pine Hollow for supplies, he heard whispers that the Cole ranch had taken in a woman, that she was another man's bride, that Ethan had lost his mind rescuing someone who didn't belong to him. When he returned home, Clara saw the tension in his eyes. "They're talking, aren't they?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, then nodded. "People around here don't need much to start gossiping." "I can leave," she said. "Once I can manage the road, I'll go." Ethan stared at her. The thought of her walking away, alone, into that same cold world, made something twist inside him. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Not until—" "You've got somewhere safe to go." She met his eyes. "And if there's nowhere?" Ethan didn't answer, but the silence between them said more than words ever could. That night, as snow fell softly outside, Clara stood by the window, watching the moon glint off the frozen fields. Ethan approached quietly, placing a warm shawl over her shoulders. "You'll freeze standing there," he said gently. She smiled faintly. "I was just thinking, maybe God doesn't forget everyone. Maybe he just sends help in ways we don't expect." Ethan looked at her, the firelight catching her face. Soft, hopeful, alive. "Maybe," he murmured. "Or maybe some folks just need a reason to live again." Their eyes met, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt something thaw inside him. Spring came slowly to Montana that year. The blizzards loosened their hold on the land, revealing green fields beneath the melting snow. The air still carried a bite, but the sun felt stronger, kinder. For Clara Hartley, it was the first spring in years that didn't feel like an enemy. She'd been at Ethan Cole's ranch for nearly 2 months now. The first few weeks had been filled with recovery. Now her days were filled with work. She mended fences, fed chickens, even learned how to saddle a horse. Ethan had never seen someone adapt so fast. He told himself it was out of necessity, but deep down he admired her courage. The two of them had fallen into a rhythm. Quiet mornings, laughter at supper, simple comfort. Still, there was an unspoken wall between them, something both feared to name. Until one afternoon, when Ethan rode into town for feed, and found himself face to face with the man he wished he'd never see again, Thomas Beckett. Beckett was at the general store, boasting about a new shipment of horses he'd bought. His coat was clean, his boots polished, but when he saw Ethan, his grin vanished. "Well, if it ain't the lonely rancher," Beckett sneered. "Heard you've been keeping company lately." "That? Poor girl I ordered must have ended up with you, huh?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You mean the woman you left to die in a blizzard?" Beckett laughed, cold and cruel. "She wasn't worth the trouble. I paid for a strong wife, not a trembling doll. What's she to you anyway, Cole? You trying to make her yours?" Ethan stepped forward, eyes burning. "She's a human being, Beckett, and if I ever hear you talk about her like that again, you'll regret it." Beckett smirked, backing off just enough to avoid a fight. "You can keep her, cowboy. She's your problem now. But don't say I didn't warn you. A woman like that brings nothing but ruin." Ethan's fists clenched. He didn't hit him, though every muscle begged to, but as he turned away, he knew this wasn't the end. When Ethan returned home that evening, Clara noticed his silence immediately. He didn't speak through supper, didn't look her in the eye. Finally, she set down her spoon. "You saw him, didn't you?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Beckett's in town, running his mouth again." Clara's face went pale. "He knows I'm here? Maybe. But don't you worry, he won't come near this ranch." She shook her head. "You don't understand, Ethan. He's a cruel man. If he thinks I've embarrassed him, he'll want to make me pay." Ethan leaned forward, voice steady. "Let him try. This is my land. No one hurts you here." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this for me?" Ethan paused, searching for words that felt too big to say. "Because you deserve better than what this world gave you. Because no one should feel unwanted." She reached across the table, her hand trembling as it touched his. "You've given me more kindness than I ever dreamed of." The room fell quiet, the kind of silence that hums with unspoken truth. Days passed. The ranch began to bloom again. Green grass, new calves, sunlight spilling across the valley. Clara's laughter returned. She started humming while she worked, and the sound filled the cabin with life. But one morning, as Ethan was out mending the north fence, he saw a dust trail on the horizon, a wagon heading straight for his property. He mounted Dusty and rode out fast, heart pounding. When he reached the road, his worst fear was confirmed. "Beckett's wagon." "Get off my land," Ethan said before the man could speak. Beckett smirked. "I came for what's mine." "She's not yours," Ethan growled. Beckett stepped closer. "She signed a contract, Cole. I paid for her passage. The law's on my side." Ethan's hand hovered near his holster. "You forfeited every right when you left her in that storm." The tension hung thick between them. Then Beckett spat in the dirt. "You think you can steal what's mine? Fine, keep her. But you'll regret it when she ruins you too." He turned his horse and rode off. Ethan stood there for a long moment, the wind whistling through the grass. He knew men like Beckett didn't just disappear. That night, Clara found him on the porch, staring at the sunset. "He came, didn't he?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded. "He won't be back. Not if he knows what's good for him." Clara sat beside him. "I don't want to be the reason you get hurt." He turned to her. "Clara, listen to me. You're not a burden. You're the first good thing that's happened to me in years." Her breath caught. "Ethan, I don't know what happens next," he said, voice low, "but I know I don't want a life without you in it." For a moment, the world was still, the kind of stillness before something changes forever. Clara's eyes shone in the fading light. "You don't even know if I can love you back," he smiled faintly. "Then let me find out." Summer came, and with it, peace. Beckett never returned. Clara planted a small garden behind the cabin, and every morning she watched the sun rise over the fields, knowing she'd been given a second chance. Not by fate, but by a man who saw her worth when the world did not. Ethan built her a new room beside the cabin, but she rarely slept there. She said the fire burned warmer near him. One evening, under a sky painted gold, Ethan took her hand and said, "You once said God sends help in ways we don't expect. Maybe he did." Clara smiled. "Maybe he sent you." The two stood there, the prairie wind brushing past, the sun dipping low, and for the first time, Ethan Cole wasn't a lonely man anymore.